Graeme Samuel is the former chair of competition regulator, the ACCC, and is chair of a newly formed airline industry body, Airlines, for Australia and New Zealand, and joins me now from Melbourne. Graeme, many thanks for your time. It is that question, is it? How many airlines can be justifiably operating in this Australian domestic market?
History has shown that some of the new startups, we've had Compass, well, Ansett wasn't a startup, but look what happened there. They folded, and there have been many others. I think the record shows about 30 of these newer airlines have failed soon after they've started up. But I don't think that's the issue, Ross, and we shouldn't write off Bonza too quickly. Let's remember that Virgin went through similar issues just a few years ago as a result of COVID, and they're up and they're working and they're thriving, and it's been able to survive. We've got to have a look at what the problem has been with Bonza, and there are a few signs that were out there some time ago. The first is they went to regional routes that weren't being serviced by anyone else, and I have to say that Qantas and Virgin and Jetstar and Rex welcomed the fact that Bonza was there because they were serving routes that weren't otherwise being served by the other airlines. But the other thing was actually forecast by Mr. Jordan, the CEO of Bonza, when he said back in 2022, he said the largest cost that we've got are airport charges. And he said we can't do anything about it. So what we've said is we won't go to those airports where the airports will not negotiate with us fairly. And I think this highlights a problem that the airlines have been arguing about now for many years. A for ANZ, Airlines for Australia and New Zealand, has been going for some 5 or 6 years now. And we've been arguing with the Productivity Commission, with successive governments and with the airports to say, just do one simple thing. Apply what are known as the aeronautical pricing principles. And they are pricing principles that basically say airports must negotiate in good faith with airlines, and in the event of an intractable dispute, it should go to an expert commercial arbitrator for resolution, not to the courts. That's legal fees and you can spend years in that. No, go to a commercial arbitrator and he or she will resolve it in a matter of 2 or 3 months. Now, there's been a strong resistance to that by all the airports. It's worth noting, I think, that Bonza is only flying to, or has been only flying to, one major airport in Australia, and that is Melbourne. It also flies out of the Gold Coast, but with some difficulty, Sunshine Coast. But otherwise, the other major airports, it won't fly to because, frankly, it can't negotiate with them.
But then if I go to an airport chief executive where they are privately owned and so their profits, businesses for profit, they would say to me that one of the issues for airlines is the hoarding of slots. This has been an ongoing back and forwards between the airlines and the airports for a long, long time.
Well, look, I have to say, Ross, that this is a bit of a slinging match that goes on. The Minister has already announced that she is going to implement what's known as the Harris Review, the review done by former Productivity Commissioner Harris, and that will be to have a look at the whole slot thing. The thing is this, all sorts of claims are made about slot hoarding. There are all sorts of claims are made about the structure of slots, particularly at Sydney Airport. The Sydney Airport slot arrangement is in accordance with all international structures relating to slots. And there is no evidence yet that's been produced to say that slot hoarding is occurring. So the first thing the Minister has said is, I'm going to do what Peter Harris, the Productivity Commissioner former chair, recommended, and that is have an audit. And the audit will be very interesting to see whether, in fact, hoarding has been going on as a claim by some outside the system. So let's put slots aside and we've got to remember Bonza has never flown out of Sydney Airport. He's actually never made an application for slots there, but it says it's a further complication. But the big thing that CEO Jordan did say in 2022, and he's repeated as late as the 27th of April when he said, the really big problem we've got is negotiating with the airports. They were given a concessionary deal, a honeymoon type deal when they started up. But those deals were ending, and the airports were starting to say, now you're on to whatever we want to charge you. He said, we can't survive with that. It's our largest cost. It's just not going to work. So one of the big things the administrators are going to have to do is to see whether, if the airline can survive, whether they can negotiate with the airports And the urgent request that we make, and I have to say the ACCC made it today when it issued its airport monitoring report, is to say you've got to reform the regulatory system that applies to airports. At the moment, all they're subject to is a monitoring process. The ACCC looks at them and says, well, this is what's happening, but we can't do anything about it. So you've got to reform that. And they've said very specifically, bring forward the aeronautical pricing principles, the APPs, make them mandatory. They do provide that airports and airlines must negotiate in good faith. That seems to me to be very sensible. And if they can't resolve disputes, refer it off to an expert commercial arbitrator. That arbitrator normally takes 3 months at very low cost to come to an arbitration, but it's an expert arbitration. That's a lot better than going to the courts and spending 5 or 6 or 7 years in the courts to try and resolve the thing.
I'll tell you what, Graeme Samuel, always good to have you on the program. I'm short of time today, so I do apologise, but many thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ross.